Baby, come back. Any kind of fool could see there was something in everything about you. What about your headphones? For what? It's a microphone to record. What are you doing?
Or my microphone.
Where's your microphone?
Yeah.
Well, we're just recording me right now. It's the intro to my next episode. So I'm just recording a singing thing, and then after that, it's gonna bring in the music and dun, dun, dun. Welcome to Chatting with Casey with your host, Casey Palmer. Episode 9, The Life and Times of the Single Mom. Oh yeah, I'm back, baby. I'm back and it feels so good. Yes, it's taken a bit to get things back where they're supposed to be, but the time away taught me a valuable lesson that I need to be about having stuff done well ahead of time if I want to live the life I want to lead and give my brand the attention I think it deserves. So after a few months away and a whole lot of work, I'd like to welcome you back to Chatting with Casey, the podcast that's all about family, food, fashion, and faith, and travel, and tech, and getting back up when we're feeling all down because no one's about to do it for us. Easy is not the word I'd use to describe the life and times of Casey Palmer right now. I changed jobs for the 17th time in 11 years. The boys are willful handfuls, and I put more on my plate than any one person should ever handle at the same time. But giving up isn't my style. Well, at least it hasn't been since I've had something worth hustling for with the kids. Even when I lose my way and get distracted by everything else going on in my world, I feel drawn to come back and give this all my best because I know it's the best shot I have at giving my kids the best lives I possibly can. So even though you haven't heard me on the podcast for a while, I still kept well busy with social media. Instagram stories, rap battles. I've been keeping the momentum going with everything I'm up to, and now it's time to get back in your ears because believe me, I've got some stories to tell. I had friends telling me that I was only making problems for myself if I started up my own podcast without a producer, and they were right. As a church friend of mine says, I quickly started shoulding all over myself. I should have recorded episodes in advance to give myself the room to work at more content while my work was already scheduled. I should have outsourced the stuff I didn't like doing so it wouldn't ruin my flow for everything else. I spent far too much of the summer lamenting what didn't work and feeling like the world was crashing down around me when the only should have happened was looking at what I could get off my plate so I could move forward with my life. So even though the summer was great, we spent plenty of time with our sons camping, cottaging, and being tourists in our own city. My head wasn't totally in it because I kept thinking about the mountain of things I needed to do. Well, that all stops now. If you haven't been checking the blog lately, I made a commitment to myself to reach the year's end free of the things that have held me back, the hundreds of drafts on my site, the piles of paper I carry with me. I'm ready to finally start a year without stressing about what I didn't finish from the year before. It's easy enough to grow if you work hard enough at it. But if you don't learn to work smarter and not harder, you are going to burn out. You're going to lose that fire for what you do because it will become so much work. So that is what I am doing. Growing the hell up and taking command of all this so I can match the potential I see in my head to whatever I put out in digital. Anyway, that's enough about me. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for coming back to check things out. Without further ado, let's start the show. I have some stellar guests to introduce you to in the coming weeks, and the first is Jennifer Tammy of Sugar, Spice, and Glitter, and a story that goes all the way back to Father's Day. June 2018, Father's Day. A solid reminder about the power of free speech and what it's like to have an audience that'll call me on my bullshit when I'm doing something wrong. Long story short, I didn't say it in these specific words, but I wrote a post saying that Father's Day is for dads and that moms should keep to their own day. Oh yeah, that went over well. Where it came from was this. In 2018, I still felt like dads were the running joke of parenting, and despite trying to be a great dad every day and seeing several other men in my life try to do the same, I didn't feel that was going to change anytime in the near future. So I wanted to fight back. I wanted people to know we did more than babysit our kids when their moms weren't with us at home. I wanted everyone to know that we weren't second-rate parents and we won't burn down the house if left to our own devices. And I was going to go a completely different way at first. I wanted to write a post that celebrated all the dads I knew were doing things right in a world where Father's Day often felt like an afterthought, which is when I saw the tweet that changed it all. Happy Father's Day weekend to the single moms out there doing both jobs on their own. And I wasn't having it. Like I said, Father's Day already felt like an afterthought. It felt like even after all this work to elevate the perception of what it means to be a dad, we couldn't even keep the day meant to celebrate it. So I wrote about it because writing while emotional is always a good idea, right? And I posted it. And that's when the comments started pouring in for 10 hours. The children of highly abusive dads, single moms who did everything after their baby's fathers walked away well before they were born. I had people who strongly agreed and people who staunchly disagreed. There were even those who just thought we should do away with these commercial holidays altogether. It was intense and emotionally draining as we hashed it out on my Facebook, but you know what? I learned something from it. I eventually realized it doesn't matter how you celebrate Father's Day as long as it's in a way that works for your family. We've learned that there's more than just two genders out there and started making changes to reflect that. When will we do the same for our families? One that doesn't have school crafts that make kids feel lesser for not having a mom and a dad. One that understands that a child with one parent is just as good as one with two, or one not raised by their bio parents at all. It made me think about what made me so mad in the first place and why there are so many better things to worry about than whether a kid chooses to celebrate perhaps the only parent who stuck around. One of the people I connected with on this long path to realization was Jennifer Tammy, the mind behind Sugar, Spice, and Glitter, a DIY blogger I'd first met with my family during a stay at Lake Erie's Shirkston Shores last year. She also happens to be a single mom who wanted to open my eyes to what things can be like when you're the only one doing the things kids need to guide them through life. There was a lot I had to learn about what it's like to parent in an entirely different life situation, and Jennifer gave me a new appreciation for that. But before we start the interview, I have a confession to make. One of the things that turned me off from podcasting for as long as it did was my audio in this episode and that I couldn't clean it up as much as I wanted. I learned some lessons about the importance of environment and equipment in the process, but you know what? The show, it must go on. So without further ado, here's Chatting with Casey, episode 9, The Life and Times of the Single Mom, featuring Jennifer Tammy. I hope you enjoy it.
So, hey everyone, we are here with Jennifer Tammy, the creative mind behind the blog Sugar, Spice, and Glitter. We first met, I believe, at Shirkston Shores last summer, checking out nice little portable homes and whatnot, and it was really cool. And Jen, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. So to give everyone some context around what we're talking about today, it all stemmed back from a nice little article I put together for Father's Day, where I pontificated that, and I'll get a little more into my thinking on this over time because it has shaped itself a little differently since I wrote it. But the idea at the time was that Father's Day was for fathers, Mother's Day was for mothers, and why would we celebrate any other kind of parent on those days? Now, while my opinion has shifted a little bit since then, in that I'm starting to appreciate the vastness of the parenting approaches and situations and family shapes and sizes out there. One vocal member to help counter my point was Jen. Jen, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and where you're coming from that you so vehemently disagreed with me?
Yes, I definitely dropped some. I was like, when you're ready to talk to an actual single mom, I'm here for you. So I am a single mom. I am not a divorced mom. I have been a single mom since I was 5 months pregnant and have completely raised my daughter on my own. There is no co-parenting. There is no, ex in the situation. It is, I am mom and dad. And so for me, it's about my daughter. It's about, Mother's Day and Father's Day, especially as a single parent. It's not about you. No one's buying me flowers. No one's making me breakfast in bed and, thanking me for what I did 7 years ago now. It's about my daughter acknowledging my role and being creative in how she does that. So when I saw your post, I was just like, no, my daughter doesn't need to sit this out.
You have a valid point there in that I guess, what happens as parents and as people, we get very much into ourselves and our own spaces, and we forget about all the other components that come in play, where we're talking about the fact that it gets really awkward, for example, when you have these things woven into the school system and having crafts there and in daycare and stuff like that, and just all these different things that come up and complicate situations.
Yes, absolutely. Because it is, if it was something that we just celebrated independently, absolutely, you guys can keep your Father's Day. But when it's Father's Day lunches at school, when it's Father's Day crafts, when it's things that children who do not have a traditional father are going to be left out of, they do get to pick a secondary figure, someone to fill that role. And I agree with your statements before where you were saying, maybe the holiday itself is the problem.
Yeah, I think one of the things that kind of came out of all the conversation was I kind of semi-jokingly, but also there's a lot of seriousness to it, where I was thinking about instead, why don't we just have a Parents' Day someday in the middle, which would be squarely between, like somewhere around the Wednesday, Thursday of the last week of May, which I calculated is right in between, to be like the day where we celebrate all kinds of parents, because there's so many layered factors that come into play between, we don't have the idea of binary gender so entrenched in our being as much anymore, and different kinds of families are raising like everything from single parent families to blended families to, do you have a stepfather and stepmother's day? Do you have a care provider day for individuals who did not, they're not their biological children? Do you have a foster parents day? There's so many different things
Absolutely.
that are happening these days. And I think what often happens is that we end up getting so much into our own individual worlds that we maybe forget about everything else that's happening out there.
Absolutely. And I think also we forget that we don't exist as singular identities, right? We're all very intersectional. And so, when we're talking about, gay families, like, okay, they have, they might both celebrate Father's Day, but then what happens with that intersection for that family if they have other roles, other identities? Do you leave out the foster kids in that situation? Do the foster kids have a complicated relationship with that holiday, and I think unfortunately too, with these holidays, there's so much built up expectation and there's a lot of hurt. And so it doesn't embrace all families, and it doesn't embrace people who don't have those people filling those roles, especially when we talk about them in such a gendered specific way.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, this is why I came into this thinking is like, I don't always necessarily take my words back when I say something, but I do always say that I'm willing to learn from the experiences. So I think that it kind of like in this case specifically, it's my journey personally from going from, okay, this is like the black and white world of how it all works, where, oh, there's a crap ton of gray.
Yeah. Well, and I understand too, because you are a super involved father. And I think unfortunately, we do live in a world that really devalues that. And even when we acknowledge involved fathers, we often do it in a way that still kind of undercuts them a little bit. And so I understand kind of wanting to be a little bit more territorial about the things that you are granted. But, and I think it's, also an awareness piece, because for me, and I sent you an article on this before the podcast. I don't think people are aware of the amount of discrimination that is still, it's not just in individual relationships, but institutional discrimination that single parents receive. And so for me, it's all of it. And it's understanding that we're not just filling the roles of two parents. There are additional obstacles that we encounter as single parents. And so these conversations are kind of heated for us because it's like, a lot of people just assume it's financial or, the physical work of doing the work of two parents. And it's also, being told by the bank that everyone else has to pay 20%, but you have to put down 25% because of that, finicky, risky single parent role, being dismissed from jobs because the Catholic boss found out that you were a single parent. And these are things that people don't realize still happen. And that survey that I sent you, 7 out of 10 people still think single parenting is the number one negative parenting type. And that was looking at interracial marriages, that was looking at gay marriages. I think people would have assumed that those would have had a more negative reaction, but really it's people still really judge single parents.
So I guess to build on that, let's talk about the fact that people really don't get it. By the time this comes out, I'll have talked with a friend of mine a few weeks ago about her role as a single mom, and she has a bit of a unique co-parenting story going on in her situation. But I'll ask you the same thing I asked her. What is it you think people really misunderstand about single parents? And when I say that, I know we talked about the fact that we usually limit the idea to the financial and the workloads parts of it. And you mentioned a bit about discrimination. Are there other things that come up that you think people just really don't have a clue when it comes down to single parenting and the situation around it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, first of all, people always assume it's negative, and that's really hard to counter because, just to look at the situation, there are things that are hard about it. I mean, absolutely. I had to work 3 jobs for the first 4 years of my daughter's life and finish my master's in order to get to a place where financially I could buy my own house, and set up my business in a way that I get to live this life. And so I'm really positive about all that. I'm thankful that I was able-bodied enough to work 3 jobs, that I had, I live in the freest country in the world where I was able to work despite the fact that my daughter was sick a lot of the times. And so I think, unfortunately, the worst thing is when you try to talk about the logistics of single parenting, just the logistics, people immediately read negativity into it. They think, first of all, either, here's a single parent playing the pity card, or they look at the workload and they just assume negativity, and they don't assume that, we have built a positive relationship to our lives because that's what we have to do. So, me working 3 jobs, I'm thankful. I'm sitting in my home that I own, that my family gets to live out our life in. And I'm so thankful for everything that came. And yes, it was hard to work those 3 jobs, but it was never negative. And I think that's the hardest thing is when we try to talk to people about our circumstances or our logistics, it is immediately met with assuming that we're being negative or, imposing your own negativity onto it. And that's really hard to be with, to be in a situation where we can't talk about the logistics of our lives without people seeing us as being negative. And then, of course, the situations where we are discriminated against, it happens a lot more than I think people would like to believe.
So then, do you have a lot of people in your life who you consider, I won't say family, but, people who are close as friends or confidants, other single parents who get what's going on and you can kind of share your experience with just because they're in the same shoes?
Unfortunately, it's really hard for single parents to really meet each other and form those relationships because of the logistics of our life. Often we're working more than one job. And so there isn't a lot of room for friendships, for meeting these people to form these friendships. So actually all of my friends are traditional 2-parent households. And so a couple of them I can come to with what's going on in my life. And, they're the safe people that I can go to. And I know that there's no judgment, but they really don't understand it to the same way, because like, for example, with my daughter being sick, she had 56 incidences of strep throat before we finally got, like it was every other week. And people don't understand, like when you have a 2-parent household, that other person putting in the laundry, that other person sitting in the room with the sick child, and not to say that happens in every relationship, but it makes such a difference. So, it was constant. As much as my friends are loving and they know that I'm not being negative, and even if I need to be negative, they're there for me. They really don't understand all the logistics that go into single parenting. One of them even, I was like, oh my God, I was so upset because I realized I didn't have milk for the next day. And she's like, just go to the store and get it. And I'm like, my daughter's in bed asleep. And she was like, oh yeah, I would have just left because, her husband's in the house with the kids. And I was like, yeah, like this, it's not a big deal to you. But for me now, I need to figure out, okay, when am I going to do that for tomorrow? And again, it's not necessarily negative, but it's just different logistics.
Mm-hmm. No, that's something I came to understand a bit as I thought on the dozens of comments that came this weekend and really thought about the situation at hand because, being in, in a lot of ways, despite the fact that I have the blog and this other side of my life I've somehow managed to cultivate, there's the very traditional stance of my rest of my life where, 2 parents at home, you have the kids there and everything. But I'm sure there's plenty that either of us are taking for granted at any given time just because you have that extra adult set of eyes, ears, feet, hands, or whatever to help out with things. And it's something that I think, as you detail, what it can be like and a lot around your own personal experience, I think it's something that I'm kind of hoping more people come to realize.
Absolutely. And I think also acknowledging that we're all intersectional, right? My daughter is, she's half Portuguese. So trying to make sure that that aspect of her being is acknowledged and celebrated and taught to her in a way that honors who she is. And that's, I don't know Portuguese. I don't know how to cook Portuguese food, but that's something as a single parent I've had to take on. I'm also a creative. I'm also a work from home entrepreneur. So there's all of these additional layers that get added to the single parent pot, right? Which kind of, being an entrepreneur and being a work at home parent, it kind of amplifies the loneliness of single parenthood. And I think, understanding that we all are intersectional like that, and that it might not just be single parenthood, but then when you add on, additional layer of being a single parent and raising a child from a different culture than you are, or potentially a mixed race child, a child who's from something that you don't quite have your own knowledge of, is a little bit more, that adds an extra dimension to it. Or, being a single parent and being under the poverty line, that adds another dimension to it because, not only do you have the stereotypes of being, a welfare single mother, quote unquote, you get the additional hurdles that someone who is in a dual parent working in a dual parent household, but under the poverty line, that the advantages that allows are a little bit different.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's a huge world with a lot of people in it. And I think everyone needs to just take some time to just kind of think about, all the people who aren't like you and all the things that are happening and just how it all comes together, because you'll never fully understand what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, but you can at least try.
Absolutely. And that goes for me too. I mean, as much as I'm over here living my single parent life and trying to, spread awareness to other people, there are times when, everyone has preconceived notions of what other people go through and what it is to be of a different identity. And so it's always good to just suspend that knowledge and actually be there and hear the person and don't read anything into it and don't have responses for it. Just be okay with what they are telling you and don't read negativity into it and don't feel the need to, shy away from the uncomfortable conversations.
For sure. So let me throw you a bit of a curveball and
All right.
switch things up a bit on you.
Bring it up.
So, sugar, spice, and glitter. I want to know about it. I don't think I knew much about it before meeting you because, as much as I try to know every parent blogger in the Ontario region, it's next to impossible because there's maybe a dozen dad bloggers and 3,000,000 mom bloggers. Like there's a literal army that we're like, wow, you guys are really well, it seems well organized to us, but we're from the outside kind of looking in like that looks like a really well organized, well oiled machine. I'm sure it's not that on the inside, but tell me about your blog and your life around it and how that all works for you.
Okay, well, I'll forgive you that you're not completely well versed in what it is that I'm up to. So I started Sugar, Spice, and Glitter while I was working 2 jobs and finishing my master's because I loved reading, quote unquote, mom blogs and parenting blogs, but I didn't see anyone out there that looked like me. I didn't, and when you're reading a blog post, I think what's funny is people put little signifiers in that reveal how different their life might be to you. So I remember reading someone's blog post and she mentioned a KitchenAid mixer. Like she was like, just throw the mixture in your KitchenAid. And I was like, do you not realize that that is a huge social, economic, signifier to me? And, as a single parent who was like, living in a 1-bedroom apartment with 3 people, I was just like, that's it. I'm starting a blog. This is going to be for people who, are like me. And what's funny is when I look at the stats of who my readers are, it's 85% married women. So, so it's really, and I don't really write about single parenthood, but it's a place where, any parent, any person who's involved with children, whether you're a teacher or a grandparent, or a parent, can come and feel like they can be a rock star in 15 minutes. So if that means they're putting together an amazing meal in 15 minutes, if that means they're putting together an awesome activity for the kids in 15 minutes, it's all about adding a little bit of sugar, spice, and glitter. So a little bit of magic into our parenting journeys, just little bits at a time.
I think your blog sounds like it has a far more noble cause than mine. I just write stuff because I'm like, hey, I'm a dad with a computer and fingers. I'm going to come up with some stuff and see how it works. And that's been kind of the running theme for 5 years.
You know what, though? I really enjoyed, I was reading your series last year and I enjoyed, I think what for me, I'm very solutions based. I'm very much, I want to provide a website that has, what do you want to make for dinner? Here's your solution. What do you want to do with the kids this weekend? Here's your solution. You're traveling, you're going to go to Disney, you're going to go to Universal, you're going to go to Chicago. I've got you covered. Whereas I think yours is more conversational in tone. And it's, and I think we need both. We need practical solutions for what are we actually going to get on the table tonight. And then we also need to have conversations like the one you and I are having where we explore topics and, we pontificate on things. And I think that, if anything, maybe sometimes I wish that I gave myself more room to do that. I sometimes do that in the, 1,000 words that I write before I finally give someone the recipe, but that's about it.
So, you're right, though, and that there's so many different types of people, so many different types of blogs out there. I think the strength of bloggers is when they finally realize what they individually bring to the table and they don't try to be like anyone else. So by you trying to do things with your, 15-minute approach and doing things that are more reflective of the lifestyle you have, me with the fact that people just can't shut me up as much as they try. Like it's it's really key to be very true to yourself and what you're putting out there. And otherwise you don't last. I've seen so many people here in the Toronto area that have just kind of dropped like flies over the years because they're trying too hard to be like the next this person or trying too much to be like that person instead of just figuring out what it is they bring to the table and making sure that they can bring that to the best of their ability every single time.
Absolutely. And I think, I have 250,000 readers a month. So I think at this point, if I was fake or not who I said I am, it would have been revealed by now. And the best part is like people that I went to school, I was a military brat, so I grew up everywhere. And so it's cool because people who I knew when I was in kindergarten now have families. and they'll be readers of the blog, and then they'll recognize, like I'll mention in a post, like, oh yeah, I really like, Chinese food because I grew up in China, and they'll go, I grew up in China, and they'll dig a little bit and they'll realize my actual last name, and they go, oh, like we know each other. And it's cool because all of these people, like, this is who I am. I am that mom who has glitter all over her house and, loves cooking, but is not going to clean the kitchen and the bathroom get cleaned, and that's it. I'm not going to pretend to be anyone else. I want to travel more than I want to renovate my house. So that's where the money goes. And so I think people, they get to know that that's actually who you are, and they connect with that. And they see themselves in you a little bit. My thing is, you don't have to be a stay-at-home mom. Even if my readers are stay-at-home moms, you don't have to be a stay-at-home mom to feel like a rock star. You don't have to be have 5 extra hours in your day on a Saturday to feel like a rock star parent that weekend.
For sure. Can I ask you a selfish question?
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
So as someone who doesn't even have a tenth of the readership you have every month, what does that even feel like? Where do these people come from that you have 250,000 a month? That's super impressive.
I think because it's authentic. I think people feel like I am their friend, and, it's consistent. They're sharing it. They try a recipe and they know that, okay, this girl actually isn't just going for Pinterest pins. Like, she's actually giving us a good recipe. I'm going to share it with my friend. I think there's that degree to it where it's, people feel safe. I've made a comfortable, happy place on the internet, and people can come there and just know that they're not going to experience anything negative. And and I think that it takes time. I've been doing this since my daughter was 2.5 too, and she's turning 7 this summer.
Oh,
so
goodness.
I know she's so old. I need to get another one soon. So I think it just, people slowly start to, because I don't have giant social channels at all. My happy place is my blog. So I think people just slowly start to gather, and then they invite their friends to come join them. And yeah.
You're the quiet, awesome secret of the internet. I like it.
The Canadian, just hiding up here.
That's okay. It's super cool to just see someone who's so passionate about things, and how you've managed to, if not figure things out, you at least know yourself well enough to kind of know what you're doing, what you're trying to get out of things, what you're trying to build. And that's really cool.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's, and it takes a while, right? Like, at the beginning, I was like, no, I'm not going to post recipes because I'm not a chef. And I think that was a huge hang up for a long time was, well, I'm not a chef. Well, I had to feed 5 kids every day for the past, 3 years while I ran a home daycare. You get pretty good in the kitchen. And, I'm the friend who always likes to have people over. So I think also suspending that, forgetting this notion that you have to be so educated and an expert in anything that you choose to be public about, especially coming from someone who's like the traditional education system. It's a really big suspension to say, like, I'm just going to put myself out there, even though I'm not an expert, but I enjoy this, and, see what happens.
For sure. So how many jobs and degrees are you pursuing right now?
Oh my gosh. I am not, it's funny. I got my master's and was planning on doing a PhD, and I don't want to work in my fields. I pursued something that I thought was really prestigious and I thought was going to be really satisfying. And at the end of the day, like, I always wanted to be a writer. I always wanted to be a creative. I was just afraid of failure. And so now I'm giving into this, and I'm, really sad that I spent $65,000 pursuing the degrees that I did, but I'm really happy being a creative now, and, writing every day and using my camera every day and coming up with awesome, recipes and kids activities. I'm trying to just be okay with balance, which is hard because I want to be busy.
Right. Well, it sounds like I don't know. if I had to say that it sounds like someone has figured it out between you and I on this conversation right now, I'm definitely putting my money on you.
Oh, no, my daughter told me I have to start dating this year, so that's going to be a whole other. So we'll see exactly what life challenges. Oh my!
For your child to tell you to like start giving you like advice like that, just it blows my mind.
She knows that my clock is ticking, right? She's like, "Mom, you're 30 now. You need to get this handled."
Oh my goodness! She sounds super cute.
Well, thank you. Yeah. The kids weren't with us when we, I think your kids were with you, but I was smart and made sure that my child was far away from all the breakables. So
yeah,
when we met.
have limited intelligence when it comes down situationally. I'm just like, oh, I can take my kids anywhere. No, I can't.
Right. Trying to take pictures and harangue them at the same time. No, I wasn't doing that. So yeah. I think it's wonderful. And I think what's awesome about your podcast too is that you're having all these different voices and you're letting people, come in and share snippets with other parents. And I really appreciated the way that you conducted this today.
Thank you. Yeah. You know what? It's so important in general to get other perspectives than your own. You can't be in your own bubble and expect to really make sense of the world around you. You'll just have this one singular viewpoint with blinders on, and you'll miss the 99.9% of everything else that's out there because you're only seeing things one way. It's like painting with one color when there's like 65 million others available to you.
Absolutely. And I think, at the same time, like for me as a single parent, like there is also that constant check of not everyone has a perfect marriage. I mean, my parents divorced, but I think sometimes you idealize what you're not living. And so I think that it goes both ways, in every single situation. It's really easy to assume that the grass is greener. And I think that the grass can be green no matter where we're standing. It's just what you make out of it and, what you're willing to be vulnerable with, really.
Yeah. I think Sarah and I both agree that both our sets of parents, while they are both married 30 years plus, they're both at a point where they're happily miserable. And that's kind of our bar. We're just kind of like, as long as we can do like a smidge better than happily miserable, we've done well. We did what we had to do. We're okay.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's what we're teaching our kids too, right? I think for me, I'm not going to teach her that single parenthood is miserable. I get to be the mom to the most perfect little girl that I have ever met in my life. This amazing, wonderful, sweet, and just amazing human gets to be mine. And, no matter what form of parent I ended up being, I get to be her mom. And that's the most amazing thing out of all of this. And if I teach her that being a single parent is hard or was at all unpleasant, I will have failed her, because she needs to know that every job, everything that I've ever done I would do 20 times over just to be able to be her mom.
Jennifer Tammy, I think you're winning. I am in awe of you, and you're doing an amazing job. Please keep it up.
Thank you.
No problem. Is there anything else you want to share with the world as we wrap up our time here?
No, I have 2 books coming out this year. I've got the Slime book coming out. It's been an ebook for a long time. It's coming out traditionally published. And then I have another surprise book coming out this fall. And just want to encourage people to live their passions like you are.
That's awesome. And if there's anything I can do to support between links and everything with my meager corner of the internet audience, do let me know. And I am more than happy to do so.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thanks for being here. It was an amazing chat. All right, guys, that was Jennifer Tammy of Sugar Splicing Glitter. I encourage you to check her stuff out because you'd be doing better than I did before I knew who she was last summer. And that is always a bar to strive for. Do better than Casey did. All right, guys, thanks for everything and have a good one.
Don't call it a comeback, but I hope you enjoyed this coming back to form after all those weeks of silence. In a world where there's only so many active creators of color, I feel it's important I stay on my game and continue producing, even when the odds feel stacked against me. A special shout out to my man Andre Prue, award-winning co-creator of Two Guys Talking Wine and the guy I ask what I should buy when I want to impress my wife, for keeping on me to get this out. It'll be the first of many podcasts to come, so I hope you're ready for the ride. As for me, there's pen and paper somewhere with my name on them, and I've got plenty of ideas left to write. So if you like what you heard, do make sure to like, rate, share, and subscribe. And until the next, make each day your best day. I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Turning it up and down.
How are we supposed to record our family moments on audio if you keep turning it off? Let's stop doing that.
I
okay?
don't know how I gave us doing that.